Okay, welcome back. Today's project, we're going to change the oil on our manual transmission, our transfer case, and our front and rear diffs on our second gen Toyota 4Runner. Things to note, the engine in this 4Runner is a 3VZE engine, and the transmission in it is an R150F transmission. For those with the 22RE, you will have the G58 transmission, and I'll give you corresponding requirements for the quantity of oil. Okay, so what you'll need for this job is a fresh set of crush washers. This is a kit that I picked up off of Amazon. It has, or it should have, all of the crush washers that you would need for all of the different bolts and drain plugs, fill plugs, etc. For this job. So I picked up 10 quarts of 75W90 Lucas brand gear oil. Please note, not all the diffs, transfer, and transmission oils are the same weight. I'll read you what the factory service manual states for both vehicles with the 22RE engine and the 3VZE. So we'll start at the transmissions. So for manual transmissions only, with vehicles with the 3VZE, you'll have the R150F transmission, and the gear weight actually corresponds to this one, 75W90, and it's API GL4 or GL5, and that's for both transmissions. For quantity, the 22RE with the G58 transmission has 4.1 quarts, and the 3VZE with the R150F transmission has 3.2 quarts capacity. For vehicles with 4x4, your transfer case, only for manuals, uses AN GL4 or GL5, and the quantity is 1.2 quarts. For your front differential, if you're operating your vehicle in temperatures above 18 degrees Celsius, you're going to be using SAE 90, and below 1 degree Celsius, SAE 80W90. The type of gear oil for your differentials is AN GL5 Hypoid gear oil for both front and rear differentials in all 4Runners. For my purposes, I could only get this brand and this weight of oil, so I'm electing to just use the same oil across the board. Before conducting the oil change, I recommend taking the vehicle for a spin just to work the oil and get it a little warm so it will pour out easier. The second thing that you're going to want to make sure of is that you're parked on a level surface. So right here, we're underneath the vehicle. For reference, this is the exhaust pipe. If you just ran the vehicle, be cautious, that might be hot. Right here is your fill port for your R150F transmission, and over here is your drain. Okay, so what you're going to want to grab is a drain pan. Both the drain and fill ports are 24 millimeters. So I'll do the fill plug. There it comes. There we go. So right here we have the fill plug and the drain plug, and then they have washers on them that you can see here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to compare the washer to the washers in the kit, and then use the same washer or identical washer. That way we can keep everything uniform. So here's the old washer, and it looks pretty similar to one of these. So I'll clean off the plugs and replace them with the right washers. So I've got the new washer on the drain plug, and we're going to put the drain plug back in. So the torque specs for the fill and drain plugs are on the G58 and the R150F are both 27 foot-pounds. So now we're just going to torque down the drain plug, and then we can start filling up the transmission. For the R150F, it's 3.2 quarts of oil, and for the G58, it's 4.1 quarts. One tool you might need for this job is a little fuel transfer pump, little hand pump. This was about $10 from Canadian Tire, and what you need to use it for is some of the locations of the fill ports are in tough locations where you can't fit the whole bottle in to tip it upside down, so then you would use a pump like this. So I now have the hose in the hole, then I have it running above the exhaust. The exhaust is cooled down now, by the way, up over the frame and then up into the wheel well, so I can just hold the bottle upside down. So you can see it's just starting to ooze out here. So you put your fill plug back on. And for the fill plug on the transmission, it's 27 foot-pounds. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is swap out the oil on the transfer case. So this is the front of the vehicle here, and it's underneath this skid plate if you happen to have it. So then there's 2 bolts on this skid plate, and they're both 12 millimeters. The sizes for your drain and fill port on the transfer case are both 24 millimeters. So the replacement washers are the same washers that go on the drain and fill plugs for the transmission. So one thing to note is the drain plug has a magnet in the end of it to pick up metal shavings. So here's the drain plug. I couldn't find any torque specifications for the transfer case itself, so I'm going to assume that it's the same torque specs for the transmission, 27 foot-pounds. So now we can fill this up with 1.2 quarts of gear oil. What you want to do is fill it up until a little bit starts coming out of the fill plug, and that's it, that's full. You don't need to do any more than that. So now it's starting to pour out, so grab your fill plug. And then I'm going to torque it down to 27 foot-pounds. And now you can put back on your skid plate. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is take off the front skid plate in order to access the fill port for your front diff. You're gonna need a 12 millimeter socket, and there's 4 bolts that hold the skid plate on. So this here is the front diff. Here is your fill port. And underneath right here is your drain port. So both the fill and drain ports again are 24 millimeter. Oh man. Oh. So there's the fill port. There we go. So on the drain plug of the front diff, there's a magnet on it as well. You can see there's some metal shavings built up on the end of it. It is an old vehicle. I don't suspect there's any serious problems, but it's not ideal. So I'm just going to clean it off, and it'll keep doing its job of taking metal away when it's driving. So these drain and fill plugs have crush washers on them. So here's the new ones, and I'm just comparing it to the old one. So there's 2 different sides to these crush washers. This one's smooth, this one's got a little groove in it. And the way that these washers came off the plugs, they have the groove pointing towards the inside. So as if you're to put the plug back on, the grooves are pointing up. So I'm going to put them on that way as well. The oil's pretty much finished draining out, so I'm going to go put the drain plug back in. So the drain plug on the front diff, you torque to 36 foot-pounds. There's 36. So the quantity for the front diff is 1.7 quarts. So the fill plug is torqued to 29 foot-pounds. And don't forget to put the crush washer on there as well. There we go. Okay, so now we're on the rear diff. The size again is the same, 24 millimeter here and 24 millimeter for the drain plug over here. So again, gonna loosen off the fill plug. There we go. she's black. Again, here's the drain plug, and it's got a magnet on it, and we can see a few shavings there, but not too bad. No big chunks, which is good. Okay, so here's the drain plug with the new crush washer on it, and the magnet's been cleaned. We'll put it back in. And we want to torque it to 36 foot-pounds. So the rear diff takes 2.3 quarts of oil. There we go. So the fill plug is going to be tightened down to 29 foot-pounds. So the last step is to put back on your skid plate. And it's a 12mm socket. So after changing out all the oil, we're left with about this much out of the 10 quarts that we picked up. Out of the kit that we purchased from Amazon with the washers, we are left with 2 crush washers and 2 copper washers. I couldn't find anywhere in the factory service manual that states how often you should change out these oils, but in general, it's roughly around every 30,000 miles that you should change it out. So that sums up the video on changing out the oil in your transmission, transfer case, and front and rear diffs. Thanks for watching. Cheers.